Nathan Nabb, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing all right, man.
Yeah.
We were just small talking about the weather, and I was saying that I grew up in Michigan, and so it's not. I mean, I guess it's winter. I was driving my son. To school this morning, and yeah, I mean it was it was ice all over the car, and I had to get the scraper out and all like that. But it's not that bad. It's Columbus, so
Right.
Columbus winter is not really. It's not really winter.
Yeah. Well, I live in Texas, so
Right.
yeah, much more of that. So, but actually, we got like about a week and a half ago, we got like 6 inches of snow, which was more snow than we had like added up in my 11 years here all together in one day, and it was amazing. It was beautiful. It reminded me of being back home growing up. So it was nice.
Okay, so wait a minute here. So did you have snow for Christmas?
No. Just I mean, obviously we didn't travel for Christmas, so we were in Texas the whole time. But we just had snow. It was like I guess it was about 2 weeks ago now. Actually, 2 weeks ago. Today. It was a big snowstorm through here.
So okay, so my son is he's 7, so he's all about Christmas and Santa Claus and all that stuff. And so what was it last? So not Christmas 2020, but Christmas 2019. There was snow. There was no snow anywhere near Christmas time. And he felt so ripped off. So, can you have Christmas without snow?
The full experience.
So it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then this year it was like perfect. It was like the day before or like 2 days before Christmas, and it just dumped a bunch of snow, and that snow stayed around for about a week. And then it evaporated and disappeared. It was enough snow that it was going to stay, and it was just right. So it was just the right kind of snow that it hit the branches just the right way and stuck on the branches. So you got to see all that kind of otherworldly kind of sights that I remember as a kid growing up in Michigan. Except for we got a lot more snow more frequently.
For sure.
Yeah. So we met when I was working on my doctorate at University of Cincinnati, and you were working there with James Bunty,
right?
And I think we had said that I wanted to try to get a couple lessons with you or something, and it didn't end up working out or whatever.
Our schedules wouldn't line up because I was traveling from Texas, like every other weekend I was heading up there, and it just never worked out that we could be in the same place at the same time, I don't think.
Yeah. But talk about overkill at University of Cincinnati. You and Bunty there at the same time. It was a pretty terrific.
It was a lot of fun. I obviously I've known James for a long time now, from when we started playing in quartet together. I moved to Kentucky. I moved to Kentucky in 2005, and I was teaching at Morehead State. And I reached out to James. I had just graduated from Northwestern, and I was missing chamber music, and so I reached out to James, and first contacted him then about potentially putting a group together and seeing if we could play, and then we eventually did, and we became really close friends. And it just so happened that James took on some administrative roles at CCM, and then he's the head of performance studies there now. In addition to his still teaching saxophone too, hardworking guy, and he brought me in for a couple of years. I taught every other weekend, 2-hour lessons to the students that I was working with, and it was great. It was a really wonderful experience, and I really appreciate James for the opportunity, obviously, but just going there and getting to be a part of that environment at CCM was a really special time for me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So talk to us about how you grew up, and maybe you can talk about, obviously, focusing on music. Mm-hmm. Maybe not obviously. I mean, focusing on anything that you were into when you were growing up, and then maybe when music started to come in focus, and maybe some early mentor figures that you had. And
oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in O'Fallon, Illinois, which is about 30 minutes east of St. Louis. So Southern Illinois, straight east on 64 from St. Louis, and growing up, obviously, when I was young, I took piano lessons for, I don't remember how long, but not very long. It didn't stick. I didn't really take to it. And then, a couple of years went by, and my folks asked me if I wanted to join band. And I said, sure, I'd like to. And I wanted to be a drummer. That's what I wanted to do. I was gonna play drums. But it so happened that my dad played saxophone in high school, through high school, and he still had his horn in the closet. And so, by that opportunity of my folks already having the instrument, saxophone was not chosen for me, but was certainly encouraged. And so I took up the saxophone. And early on, my dad actually, taught me just some of the very, very basics, in addition, of course, to my 5th grade band director. And then I started taking lessons with a local high school student, and then gradually moved into, I studied with, in middle school, I studied with a gentleman by the name of Mark Staniford. And O'Fallon, it's important to know that O'Fallon is right by Scott Air Force Base, and Scott Air Force Base always had a band. And, the Air Force musicians would travel in and out. And I just so happened that I was at the right age, at the right time when Mark Staniford was there, and he was a great teacher for me. And I studied with him for a few years, and then he was stationed elsewhere. And then I started working with Paul DeMarinis, who is saxophone professor at Webster University, still is, I think, professor of jazz studies and saxophone at Webster University. And then I studied with Jeffrey Collins for a little bit, who was also in St. Louis. And so those were my private teachers, and all, great guys, super influential, really important to me. And my band directors too. Dr. Carol Hyde was my beginning band director, and then Mr. Ed Fulton was my middle school band director, and Vince Cosmano was my high school band director. And really, I was just so fortunate to have that combination of teachers in my life. And not a single one of them was ever pushing me towards a career in music. That wasn't really part of it. It was just about what we're doing at the moment, trying to be the best that you can be given the time that you have, and really establishing the discipline and the regimen, and understanding that those are life lessons, right? That's something that you carry on in whatever you would choose to do. And it just so happened that, I guess it was the summer before my senior year, my mom asked me, well, it's time to make a decision. What are we going to do? And ultimately, I chose to audition for music programs. And so from there, I went to University of Illinois and studied with the wonderful
Thank you so much for watching my video so far. If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
The wonderful Deborah Richtmeyer had 4 amazing years of lessons with her, and then moved on to Northwestern, where I studied with Fred Hemke for my master's and doctorate. So I really, it's amazing looking back. You realize how influential like everybody is along the way in kind of shaping your habits, your musical thinking, your just really the whole person. And so I wouldn't be where I am or who I am today without my teachers. That's for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you with the specificity, all of the names.
Yeah.
Of those teachers. It's that's so important. It's always a great opportunity to recognize those that have had that kind of impact on us.
Right. I think that it is really important, and I think that we don't have enough opportunities to thank them publicly, and so I'm just incredibly grateful for all my experiences. So,
my very first interview was with James Bunty.
Oh yeah.
In this series, way back in March of 2020.
Right.
And I also interviewed my saxophone teacher from Western Michigan University, where I did an undergrad and a master's degree. Trent Keniston, that's right. And Trent studied with Londex, and so he had a particular approach, and I didn't, he was always been a great teacher, a mentor, a friend. He's always been those things, and is very patient with me and prodding in just the right ways. And you don't really realize, it's not possible to realize, what someone is depositing in you at that point. And yeah, my dad, of course, I interviewed my dad also. My dad was my teacher all the way until I went to college.
Really?
And I started really young, and so a lot of things that people ask me about, well, what were you practicing when you first started out, and it's like, well, I'm not sure. I was 6 when I started, and
you
so
really
there's not,
6?
Yeah, there's not a lot that I remember. I remember being possessed, by the saxophone. Like, it's like I really wanted to do this thing, but that's, like, what was I practicing specifically? Like, I don't know what that stuff is. So part of the reason I actually interviewed my dad was because, he knows, was to inform myself as to what that stuff was. But it's great to be able to do that, to be able to pay those, pay that respect.
Right. Agreed. And, I think that when you were talking about, it's hard to process, in the moment, everything that all the knowledge or experience that people are giving you. I mean, yeah, I still reflect on either lessons or maybe not necessarily specific moments, but some specific moments, but just either teachings or kind of musical ideals, or that still I keep coming back to and keep running up against. I mean, that it's a deep well that you have to go back to, for sure.
It's funny too, like some of my teaching approaches, I'm very aware where they came from. Like, you know, verbatim, like saying exactly the same words with the same pacing. You know, you start becoming aware that you're doing that. So I'm aware of that. And then, but then often is the case that I'm saying a lot of things that I don't realize that the sort of the seed to that whole thought and that line of thought came from Trent, you know?
Yeah.
One case in particular was John Wojciechowski, a great saxophonist. He was a finalist at the Thelonious Monk competition. I met John when we were both All-State in Michigan, playing in their top, you know, the All-State band during high school or whatever. And we roomed together, and he's older than I am. He went to Western and studied with Trent also.
Oh.
Did his undergrad. And he was done by the time I got there. And so we weren't there at the same time. And I was, we were talking in our interview. It might have been in our interview. We were talking about, no. It wasn't in our interview. I think it was, I had put a post on Facebook. You know, of course, we're Facebook friends. So I had put something on Facebook about I think it might have been in one of those lesson of the week videos that I did. And I was talking about tone, and I was talking about, you know, something about the bicycle tire and a car tire and the pressure and how much volume of air the lower notes need versus this, you know, airspeed or the high, you know, I was talking about something like this. And he wrote a comment down there. He says, yep, that's exactly what that's like an illustration exactly that I use. And I know that the thing is I know that Trent didn't use those exact words when he expressed that to me, but you know, obviously that's what's common, right? That's where that came from, right?
Right.
So it's just interesting how that stuff, you know, and it's a seed, and it was watered, and it just keeps growing.
Right.
And all the benefits that come from that. So just, you know.
Yeah. And also, I think that as you grow, as you mature as a musician and as a teacher, I think the interesting thing is how those principles, those core principles, also mature with you, right? It's like you bring that, and then you're adding your own ideas to it, and it's like this kind of beautiful. This is a weird analogy, but it's like a beautiful kind of like pedagogical stew where, you know, there's all this cross-referencing of your own input, your teacher's input, you know, things that other respected peers or other teachers have said, and kind of how you're combining all those things for your students. I think it's the synthesis of that is really cool, really fun.
You know, one thing about Trent was that Trent was a real generous, you know, all this, so, you know, all the great teachers in my mind, the great teachers, they're all like super generous, like, you know, but you know, we all know these stories of these teachers that are very stingy, and they'll only show you the stuff that's in the curriculum, you know, and then they won't share any of the you know, the special sauce, you know. And then there's a philosophy with that. I think that they justify doing that because, you know, if you don't have to work for it, then maybe it won't stick. So then if I show you everything, if I give you everything, then you don't have any skin in the game, or whatever, you know, whatever that justification is. To me, it seems like the job of a teacher is to speed up, you know, the progress of the student faster than you got there, right? So isn't that the purpose of pedagogy, right? I mean, you're taking something that's a winding road, and you're pulling all of the kinks out of that road, and you're making it straight, and then you're able to say, look, watch out, because, you know, there's a big tree that's, you know, right there, and you're gonna run into it, whatever, you know. It seems like that's what the thing is, not to stand on the side of the road and just wait for them to run into the tree and say, hey, this is part of, them's the breaks, this is part of your learning process. It's not look, academia is not the school of hard knocks. If they wanted that, they can go out. They don't have to go to school for that. But if you're going to school, there should be some sort of benefit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, fortunately, every teacher I've ever had has been the, the super generous type. I mean, that has consistently gone above and beyond, not just with knowledge, but also like personal investment, like that you feel like there's not that just they're teaching you saxophone, but that they care about you as a human being, and that they want to see you succeed and be, find your place, you find your niche in the world. And so that's been something. I mean, the whole reason why I actually decided I wanted to be a college teacher, because I went in, originally I was a music education major. I was going to be a band director. And the reason why I decided ultimately I wanted to be a college teacher was because I recognized, in myself how much growth, both as a musician, but, through the years, hopefully as a person, just realizing, expanding your worldview, learning, through like quartet, for instance, like ensemble, and maintaining a quartet for a long time can be a tough thing. And there are, personalities and everything else involved, and just all of the kind of 360 component to an education. I just realized how much it meant to me, and that's I hope, and I strive to be that for my students too. And so that's ultimately why I wanted to do it.
Well, these days, and I know you're a family man.
Yeah.
Game recognizes game. I see my students. It's like my students are my kids,
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of, and there's a thing where, there's a lot of brokenness,
Mm.
People aren't, we're all messed up in some kind of way anyway, right? But it seems like there's been a lot of failing. Families are falling apart, and there's,
I mean, now
culture.
there's more stress than ever right now, right?
That's right, and just failures of culture and society and everything else. And a lot of things that maybe in an ideal situation that students would already have worked out, they don't have it worked out at all. And what I find is that the students that have more natural ability, they have less worked out. Often is the case, as far as just being a person, just, being a good person, not being selfish, looking out for your fellow man. I use my studio as a way to sort of foster certain kinds of, qualities that I want them to, personify, generosity, it's a competitive kind of thing. And yeah, playing in front of your peers, other saxophone students, they've all played like all the same music, and and they know where you're likely to trip up. And so there's like a nerve-wracking sort of component of that, but you're also together, right? You're not pot-shotting each other when you get a chance to. You're, and so it was really important for me to have that sort of more a home kind of vibe in my studio. It seems to me that's probably your same agenda or goal in your studio.
Yeah, and I mean, that was, in all honesty, from, and I mean this actually as a compliment. I learned so much from my peers when I was in school too. I mean, I learned as much from my peers as I learned from my professors, and I learned a ton from my professors. It was just such an environment where we were supportive of each other. We played for each other. It was like the practice rooms were like a lab, right? I mean, you go play for somebody, or they're playing for you, or you're getting feedback or whatever. And that's just kind of everybody's elevating for the sake of the craft, not to one up somebody else. And that to me right now is one of the biggest things missing from in this environment, where you can't just you can't be hanging out in somebody else's practice room while they're playing for you or whatever. It's not, with the pandemic going on and with the restrictions in place, and it's just not safe and it's not allowed. And so that has been I think the biggest issue is the community or the family environment of the studio and the school.
And I would argue that even prior to the pandemic, I think that the younger generations, I hate hearing myself say that, because it just makes me feel old. But, that's right. But the younger generations, I don't think that they value that in the way that we did. And I think it's progressively less. Part of the reason is because almost all recorded music history is available at a button push, right? So the sort of, and then also everything's free, right? You can find some kind of way to make it free.
Sure.
Get on YouTube, almost everything's there.
Right.
And I know that a big part of my development as a musician was together. It was in community. It was, hey, we're going to buy this newly released, Coltrane record, or Kenny Garrett's, his new project just came out.
Yeah.
And grab a pizza and just listen to that thing like 3 times. Because when you listen to stuff together, I have biases, right? And I have a personality. I'm not a robot, right? So I have certain things that my ear is just going to magnetically attach to, and that probably will make me less sensitive to other aspects of the music, right?
Yeah.
That's how that works. Right. But other people, they're cut differently. Right? So while I'm pointing out this thing, they're pointing out this other thing, and maybe I wouldn't have heard that, right? So it seems to me that things have changed, and then obviously the pandemic has exacerbated all of that, those tendencies.
Right.
One thing that I hope that happens is, because people have sort of been starved of a certain kind of community, especially with music, that maybe some of those values that I was speaking of will actually come back.
If I had to place a bet, I would say it'll come rushing back. That's what I would say. I mean, I think that, and what you're doing with these interviews and what I've been doing with the studio class thing. I mean, it's a way to have a sense of community in music when we can't be together, right? you know, I have very, very mixed feelings about social media, generally speaking. But one of the amazing things right now is that when we're not able to be together, we're at least able to still maintain some kind of connection, right? And if there is a silver lining in this otherwise pretty dark year, I think that, you know, people have at least found ways to maintain that connection and kind of reaffirm the value of it. And once we're able to be in the same, but I should say, it's no replacement for being in the same room with someone, or
Right.
no question.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, especially for, you know, acoustic music, you know, that is do you have to say acoustic when you say music? You know, so, you know, you're like in the same room and like you hear like the way that the room sounds, right? Like how it bounces off the wall, and part of it is absorbed by somebody standing in front of you, and it's just all of that stuff that we I mean, stuff that you don't even think about, that it's like the stuff that maybe I miss the most, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh, you know? Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, those little intangibles are all of a sudden tangible, right? Like you realize now the things that we, I guess you could say took for granted are no longer taken for granted. And I guess in a way I'm grateful for that realignment, you know. There is a realignment there, and if we choose to pay attention to it.
Yeah, and, another realignment that in these interviews that artists have admitted, especially artists that are like really heavy touring artists, they're gone all the time, and that they've actually said that it's been a positive thing because the pace that they were at was not sustainable, and just the gift of just being able to be home with their family,
right?
And that's another one of those realignments that, you know, if we choose to see it for what it is, and use it for what it can offer, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe that's a positive thing. You know, my wife is an optimist, and she will frequently say that she's a realist, but she's not a realist. She's definitely an optimist. And of course, if she was interviewing right now, she would be saying that her husband is a pessimist. He will say that he's a realist, but no, he's not really a realist. He's a pessimist.
I was gonna say that observation goes both ways.
It's pretty funny, but I actually do think I am a realist, right? Which means that I want to speak accurately about what is. You know, try to remove hyperbole if I can. And, you know, you have all these jazz clubs, for instance, that the Jazz Standard closed. You know, it's like, come on, man.
The Blue Whale closed.
Yeah, we're in. It's like this free fall, and you don't know where the bottom is, right? And these places, I mean, they can't just do this out of the goodness of their heart. They have to pay their mortgage, right? So, what are you going to do? So that's pretty dark. That's not that great.
Yeah.
But as we just said before, I think that there's a way to see this as something potentially positive. So, for instance, these interviews, your saxophone studio online, there's in a lot of different sort of ways that people have been forced to sort of repurpose their skills, you know, and learn new skills, you know. the fact that we have technology that can facilitate this, right?
Right.
So that's a great blessing, right? That's something to look at as positive. I think some of the new technological developments that are happening right now because of what's going on now, I think that stuff is positive.
Yeah. I mean, you like speaking of new skills. I mean, like your setup, man, is killing. You got screens all over the place. You got your boom mics. You got your lighting. I mean, I'm bare bones over here. I got my laptop. So you know, I mean, were you doing a lot of this kind of thing before? Or did you just, you know, decide to really invest in this in the process and really start to work out the technology?
Yeah, so I've had a YouTube channel and a social media presence since 2007. And first it started out where, okay, so before I took the job at Ohio State, I took the job at Ohio State in 2004.
Yeah.
And before that, I was working 5 jobs.
Oh.
And this is the typical, you know, freelance musician thing. You know, if you want to make a living as a musician, then you have to do what it takes. You have to do all of the stuff that you have to do, and that's just what it is. And it makes me have a great deal of peace when I see a student that is showing me that they are not going to have the wherewithal to walk this thing through. And I have the conversation that says, hey, you know, you can still be you can be a great supporter of the arts. You can still love the arts. You can still do the arts as a hobby, but maybe this isn't, maybe this isn't the thing, you know. And it's a hard conversation to have, but it also gives me peace because of what I'm saving them from.
Yeah.
You know, because even if you, I don't have a choice. I am totally stuck with this. I don't even remember choosing music.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm totally stuck. I'm too far in.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Right.
But by the time that I thought that, recognized where my life was going, I was already way out in the middle of the lake. And I could either keep swimming to the other side, or I could, I guess I could keep swimming. But, I had 5 jobs. I was teaching 20 students out of my house. I had, was a professional musician, right? Playing gigs, recording, going to trade shows, hustling gigs, playing with 5 different bands. Third, I was a part-time band director at a church. I didn't mention my full-time position, where I was orchestra director at Lansing Eastern.
Oh, wow.
In Lansing area. And then I was also a part-time band director in another school district. Right. So, I'm doing all this stuff, and I was not in a tenured position or a tenurable position. I was a permanent sub, and I was very concerned about my own safety, because there was a lot of bogus allegations and stuff going around at that time. Students can make allegations, and if you don't even have tenure, the teacher union is not going to defend you. They're just going to say, hey, get him out of here then, And so I was concerned about that. And so I was, studying and seeing what's going on. And so when I took the job at Ohio State, one of the first questions that I asked my teacher, well, he was my teacher, but in a different kind of way. My boss, Ted McDaniel, I asked him, I said, so how does a professor protect themselves? Like, what is the mechanism that the school has to protect the teachers from the students? To just protect, because, what if bogus allegations or whatever, and I don't want to, and he says, so my defense is, look innocent. That's literally what he said. That's actually what he told me. He said, look innocent. I was like, look innocent. Now, at first, I thought he was being flippant. I thought he was like, why are you asking me that question? Here, I'll just tell you this. But then I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? Look innocent. Okay. Leave your door open when you have a lesson. If someone starts to display certain kind of especially if a female student starts to do some little strange things, then you try to make sure that, you teach that lesson early in the morning with the door wide open, whatever, about all of that kind of stuff. But then the other thing I started thinking about was I should video my lessons. And so I had two reasons for doing that. One of them was because I had one student in particular, a female student, that was belligerent in one of my lessons there. And I was like, this is not right. And of course she came back, her next lesson, she comes in and she says, oh, I'm sorry. I'm on medication. I'm bipolar, and I haven't been able to afford my medication. I've been off of it for 2 weeks. Right. And I'm like, ding, ding, ding. That might be the reason to start videoing. So, I started videoing my lessons. I wanted to, also see, to evaluate my own teaching, what's going good, what's not going good. And then I started to notice that there was a few kind of nuggets in there. I was like, I wonder if anybody else would be interested in that. So I started uploading that content to YouTube, and I called it Lesson of the Week. It was like little 10-minute clips. And that kind of started things down a particular path with videos. And then I started releasing them also as a podcast on iTunes U. And then, kind of one thing kind of after the other. The first videos the quality was terrible. You can hear in my office is it was really a math building. And so every office has these air conditioners in the window, right? And if you don't have that air conditioner on full blast all day, even in the winter, then it's like a sauna in there, right? So, so the recordings are all like until I start playing, and then I'm using like the whatever the integrated microphone is on the webcam, so everything started there, and then it kind of started progressing. I started getting my video editing stuff together. And then I started putting a lot of other kind of footage up, for concert footage, full lecture footage, and all that kind of stuff. And so it just kind of it progressed from there. And I had stopped doing the Lesson of the Week thing. I only did that for about 1.5 years straight. But everywhere I go, people they're oh man, when are you going to start doing the Lesson of the Week videos again? And then I also recognized how influential that series of videos was, because I saw what other people started doing after they saw me doing that.
Sure.
And other people, admitted to me and said, hey, I saw you doing this. And so then I started doing this other thing. And, so I'd always said, I'm going to get back to this, and I'm going to get back to it. And then, then it was tenure time, and I was like, I'm not going to be thinking about that anymore. I need to make sure I get tenure.
Sure.
And then, just other life events occurred that sort of got me away from doing that. up until recently, I'd say about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when I started getting more assertive and aggressive about the social media stuff again.
Yeah.
And then started sort of updating pieces of equipment and here and there. And then obviously in March 2020, when the bottom fell out, I was like, well, I had all of this stuff just canceled simultaneously. But guess what? This is also a time where a lot of people are going to be available for interviews because they don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is the time to get this moving. So that's a long story. I was talking for a long time, but yeah, but it was pretty organic, and then it kind of developed into something, and now it's like this pandemic has turned me into I was joking with one of my buddies. I told him it's turned me into a social media influencer.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, I have really like with Facebook, or Instagram or whatever. I've always been. I guess I'm kind of a private person just naturally. And so it's not in my like wheelhouse to just be like living out loud on social media all the time. And
yeah, me neither. It has taken. I'm an introvert, so there you go.
Yeah. So it takes a fair amount of courage, right? To put stuff out there and to. I don't know if courage is the right word or not, but at least it takes a fair amount of energy on my behalf, at least, to be always doing things. But you get more comfortable with it. It's an environment that you have to, especially right now, as you said, it's one that I think we've all become a lot more comfortable with. For better or for worse, I guess. But I'd like to think for better.
Well, like I said, you try to, you eat the meat and spit out the bone, right? You try to, try to make it what it is. Mm-hmm. But I have a lot of other interests other than music, and so what has started happening is I've started interviewing different folks, not just musicians. Most of my interviews have been musicians, but now it's been political pundits, politicians, academics, philanthropists, athletes, people involved in a particular sector of YouTube. Mm-hmm. It's I just I'm listening to stuff, I'm watching stuff, I'm reading stuff all the time, and so it's a I think positive way to stay engaged.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to do.
I mean, my project originally, March 20, we've said it 3 or 4 times already, but March 2020 hit, and I found myself thinking like, how do I, all of my lessons were always face to face, always. All of our ensembles face to face, always. There's in my, at that point, I had never wrestled with the idea of online instruction and what that would mean. And then all of a sudden you're faced with the reality of like, how can I be an effective teacher when we're all in different rooms and people are dealing with different, internet connections and, computers or phones or iPads or whatever. And so I started to realize like, I'm going to reach out to a couple of folks and see, if they'd be willing to to visit for my studio class, and then I thought, well, wait a minute, why keep this to just my students? Why not like open this up? And kind of out of that, this thing was born. And so, and you're right, sure, you know, everybody's available, or not everybody, but most people are pretty available right now.
Everybody's available. Everybody's available. You said,
but not everybody. Whether or not you're willing is up to you, right?
Right. That's a different issue, but yes.
And so I think that I've just been, the other part of it that I've been so grateful for is I've been so blown away by the, you know, you were mentioning generosity earlier of teachers. I just like the community at large, the saxophone community, the music community, just the generosity and the overall kind of humanitarian energy that's around right now. I think we're all going through something together, and so the most important part of that has to be that we do this, I think, together. And so that's that you know, I think that's been the real lesson for me out of this, at least, has been that this is not ideal, and we all at the minimum, right? At the bare minimum, this is not ideal. Of course, on the other end of the spectrum, I mean, it's a global health crisis, and so like, it's hard to process all this stuff on your own. And I think if we have these connections, at least, that it makes this time a little bit more bearable.
That's definitely true. I want to digress a little bit.
Sure.
So you were talking about when we were both at University of Cincinnati, and you said you were doing a lot of driving.
Yeah.
So I have, I was doing a lot of driving too.
Yeah.
So I was driving, I was driving 3 days a week back and forth between Columbus and Cincinnati, which it's about an hour and a half. No, I'm sorry. It's about 2 hours.
Okay.
It's about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so that's 12 hours. And I started recording lectures, saxophone lesson, all my lectures, everything, and I would listen to it in the car. In particular, I'd listen in the car in the morning while I was heading in, and one thing that was quite restful, I don't want to say, maybe it's not restful, but rejuvenating. It was a very rejuvenating experience. It was a lot of driving, and I still, when I look at my schedule, I don't know how it was possible that I was full-time at Ohio State, full-time at University of Cincinnati, with an assistantship, driving 12 hours, every week, 25 hours at another church, at a church I worked at. I don't even know how that math doesn't even work. Math doesn't, right. And I still somehow was home early enough to put my son to bed every night. I don't know. I don't even know how that's possible. How is that possible? I don't even know how it's possible. I still think about it. But even though it was, all of that was happening, it was some of the, I felt very rejuvenated because it was a situation where I didn't have to be on.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to learn. The information didn't have to come from me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I just came and I sat down and I learned. And I just, that was very, and I didn't realize how much I needed it.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I wonder, and the reason I digress to that point is, you know, I in some ways I know it's kind of, you know, it sucks and everything, but I kind of needed what happened to happen right now.
The slowdown.
Yeah, because I didn't have, you know, almost everybody that, you know, I've talked to has said that, you know, all the musicians have said, oh yeah, 2020, man, it was booking up solid. It was going to be like a record year. It was going to be, man, I'm conquering the world this year. You know, I'm going to break the internet this year. Everything's going to be, it's all happening. Right.
Yeah.
That's what everybody was saying. Well, most folks were saying, you know, and the thing is that is sort of burnt out is most folks, I think most artistic people have been, if that actually happened, if it really was a record year, then, you know, that was only going to get worse.
Sure.
And so I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm trying to find ways to see this positively, even though my wife would say I'm a pessimist.
Yeah. Well, I certainly am too. I mean, I think it's all. I think choosing to have an optimistic outlook in the face of what could only be considered to be, you know, terrible, you know, by all accounts, you know, economically, health, creatively, you know, a terrible year is, you know, knowing that, again, like trying to see the positives, like, you know, having more time with family or getting to, I mean, you know, you were saying when you were, you don't even remember choosing music. You were already so far out into the lake, right?
Right.
This actually, you know, I mean, if you choose to do it, this gives you time to like reevaluate and see like what are some other projects I'm interested in the future. What,
right.
You know, what can I do next year if things are working out? Who have I always wanted to play with that I haven't had a chance to, or things like that. You know, yep. I'm a planner, I guess. And so part of my deal is I'm always living a little bit in the future anyway, because I'm thinking about, you know, this, you know, these other things coming up. But, you know, I mean, you and I are fortunate to be in an environment that is, you know, has been stable. At least, you know, we right. Lost our jobs, for which I'm eternally grateful. You know, and so I think there, you know, for us at least, I feel like I have to feel grateful and optimistic right now, because I have a lot to be grateful and optimistic for, and so. Even I don't think in the face of those things, trying to be grateful and optimistic in the face of that, getting back to what we were saying, I think that's a good strategy. I think that's you know, for me at least, it's a healthy strategy, trying to stay that, you know, stay focused and focus on the things that we have to
do. I'm a planner too. I'm a planner too. And Yeah, I mean, I can't say it better than you just said it. That's that's what I think too. So okay, so let's talk about maybe some current projects. You already talked about the Saxophone Studio Online.
Mm-hmm.
You've talked about that a bit.
Yeah.
What other projects have you been engaged in, and maybe what other projects or just other things have you sort of have sort of risen and on the priority chart?
Yeah. I mean, I've been working on a lot of unaccompanied music lately. I mean, so obviously there, that's a flippant answer, but also partially true. But I think that you were talking about learning technology and things like that, and I've been doing some microphone research. I'm trying to invest in some of those things because, obviously I'm not a recording engineer, and I'll never have the time or, the ability to invest the time to what it takes to become a really true great audio engineer. But at the same time, I do think that in order to provide some important pedagogical resources and try to make some of my own recordings where I don't, where I don't need the full setup, that I can do some of those things myself. And so I'm working on some of that. I have a recital coming up. I'm excited about in March.
It's going to be it'll be live streamed.
Oh, it's going to be live streamed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That'll be live streamed. But one of my dear friends from back when I was teaching in Kentucky, her name is Jialing Shea, and she now is on faculty at Northwestern State, which is in. So I live in Nacogdoches, Texas, and so the sister city of Nacogdoches is Natchitoches, Louisiana. Spelled very differently, pronounced differently, but she teaches there, and so that's about an hour. Maybe it's closer to an hour and 45 or 2 hours away. But we've decided we're gonna play a concert together again. We haven't played together since 2015, so I'm really looking forward to that. It's been a long time, and like I said, she's a dear friend, and so I'm looking forward to not just talking on the phone, but making music together, and so that'll be a lot of fun. And other than that, I've had this long kind of slow burn of a project that I've had some more time to work on, which is a book that I've been writing.
Okay, yeah.
And this is it's a pedagogical book that is it's teaching methods for extended techniques on saxophone. So basically, slap tonguing, altissimo, circular breathing, go down the line. There are certainly, altissimo, there are methods. Obviously, Keniston has a book on circular breathing, and there are a lot of resources like this. But I wanted to add to the existing canon with kind of some of my own thoughts, and really like try to create teaching methods for all of these. So it tends to be, at least with a lot of these, that it's kind of somebody in the studio knows how to do this, and they're like the oracle for slap tonguing, and you go to them and you get the knowledge, and then you have it. So there's this tradition, again, in a normal year where there's this lab environment, we're all learning from each other. But trying to at least codify in a way some of these, like some methods for people to actually address it in a step-by-step or more beginning to end kind of way. So I've been working on that. And other than that, trying to find just the motivation to stay in shape. I bought a bike recently. I've been doing a lot of riding, and so that's been fun.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, the gym has been my saving grace. That has really kept my mind from thinking of all of the worst possible things simultaneously all the time. All the anxiety and stuff.
Sure.
It's really helped me to push that down. It's been a powerful therapeutic.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's actually, for musicians, that's one of the, I think, something I really try, and I don't talk about it to all of my students, but I try and reinforce this, to students whenever possible. Is like, physical health is super important. I mean, you can't, that has to be, mental and physical health have to be the primary, right? If you're not,
right.
if you're not there, then school is.
That's right. If you don't have that, you don't have anything.
Right.
No.
And so I think that, especially right now, I haven't been going to the gym. I've been doing all my exercise outside, but, that's been fun. And of course, the other project is family. My daughter's 2, and, that's amazing. And we just got a dog about a month ago, and that's been great. So plenty of things keeping us busy. That's for sure.
You're enjoying the potty training? I'm talking about other dog.
She's been great. She started early, and we're pretty much through. So that's good.
Yeah, I had this method my dad taught me.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the thing? Like you have them, you crate train them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when the dog is little, you have them in the crate, and the crate is like right by the door.
Yeah.
So then what happens is the first thing you do is you take them right out.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you take them out of the crate, you go right out.
Yeah.
And if you just do that enough times, then they figure it out.
Right.
It's not that not that tough. I think some folks maybe make a bigger deal about it than it has to be.
Yeah.
That worked like a charm.
Yeah. I mean, I think we had a border collie. We have a Cocker Spaniel now, but we had a border collie before, and she was so sweet. And all my friends who ever met her, just, she's amazing. And so smart, right? So smart. And there was never an issue with them. I mean, fortunately, both of the dogs that we got, we adopted both of them, and they were, kind of already house trained, so we didn't have to.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, I see.
But we do exactly what you talked about, the straight out of the kennel, right outside.
Yeah. I mean, even so our dog is Coltrane.
Oh, that's his name.
Yeah, that's his name,
Nice.
Coltrane. And he's a miniature schnauzer, and we got him when he was a baby. When he was a puppy. And so we went through that training thing, and like I said, it just works like a charm. It's not really much to it, and they don't really want to do it inside.
Yeah.
They would prefer to do it outside. But if they get sort of somehow reverse trained to do it inside, then it's like really hard to get them to, so.
Right.
Anyhow.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, that was off the rails a little bit, but that's okay. So anyhow, yeah. Now I had mentioned to you this project, and then I just got busy with everything, all this stuff. I had called you about this Fairling thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's still something that I think would be an interesting project to do. And since everybody's, all isolated and sequestered and everything, it might still be something that we could do.
Yeah.
But
So just like, different individuals takes on different fairlings as one big project.
yeah, everybody picks one, or maybe, or depending on how many folks we get, but one or two or something, and then just release them. You just release a recording.
No, that's a good project.
Almost like and actually not even like a not even necessarily like a CD or something. It could just be like a learning resource.
Yeah.
A collaborative learning resource that just has all the stuff. It's released on SoundCloud or something, or
For sure.
I mean, we could figure out how to do that. That's actually how I did my my classical CD when I released in January, last year January.
I was going to say.
Yeah, it was released on SoundCloud first, and then I just released it on YouTube in, like, I don't know, July or something.
So are you doing any physical copies of albums anymore?
Man, I've thought about this quite a bit, and I don't know what the advantage is of doing that. I'm going to be doing another project this year. It'll be a jazz project, and I'm on the fence about how I want to do it.
Yeah.
You can do the download cards thing if you need something physical that you want to be able to put in people's hands. Because sometimes people just, well, what am I buying? It's like, I can't touch it, So if that's the case, and so also, like, if you have a concert or something, and when we do actually get to play in front of real audiences again, and people come up to you and they don't feel like they have to stay 6 feet away, and they can actually touch something that's in your hand. Okay, I've went up enough with that. Then, we could give them, like some kind of a download card.
Yeah.
And there's companies that do that, and it's not particularly expensive. But yeah.
See, I agree. The problem is, like, I guess, like, I'm just enough of a creature of the, the album age that, like, liner notes, man. I love liner notes.
I know.
But, at least, like,
but what you can do though, with the download card thing, is basically it would access, it would be like a direct link to like a Dropbox or something.
Yeah.
And the Dropbox could have whatever you wanted them to have. It could even have like a couple videos in there that are bonus content, right? But then you could have liner notes, you could have some custom artwork, you could have like a photo shoot that has a bunch of pictures that they wouldn't have gotten just on a CD, So you can find a way to make it like a bonus and a positive thing. But yeah, I'm always going to prefer records and CDs because of the liner notes, because of the tactile thing.
Yeah.
And
for sure. I mean, that's like right here sitting on my desk, I still have like lesson notes, like Monday lessons, Tuesday lessons. I still write all the stuff down just because that's, I don't know, I guess, that's part of just how I learn, I think, is, the actual physical, holding something. It's easier for me. I always prefer still reading a book over reading a Kindle or an iPad or.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm just kind of that guy, I guess.
No, I understand. I totally get that. Now, as far as like my music, that's all on an iPad.
Really?
At this point, it's all on an iPad because I play in so many different kinds of settings, doing different kinds of things that, I was thinking about this because, so my church gig, I'm the minister of music at Missionary Baptist Church, Second Baptist Church, and I play mostly bass, but I play keyboard and I play maybe saxophone for like an offertory selection or something. I sing on some things. I didn't know that was going to happen, but thank you, pandemic, I guess. So another one of those positive things, I guess.
Yeah.
And the thing is that with the way that things, and I have all these foot pedals underneath. I'm starting sequence. We're playing with in-ear monitors and production sequences with the click and cues and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of how I would be able to do that while having to pull out like sheets of music, and then be able to get into the next song fast enough.
Right.
And so I don't know that I could go back. The only time that I actually use a sheet music is when I play with the Columbus Jazz Orchestra.
Yeah.
And they just have the book, or when I'm playing with the Count Basie Orchestra.
So you have the foot pedal game worked out?
I have the foot pedal game, and this is what I'm using. Let me show you.
Oh.
Now, I've owned a bunch of different ones. I owned that what is it, the PED or whatever, and it doesn't have any moving parts.
Yeah.
It's just like it's
Pressure sensor or something.
Yeah. So I own that. Own one of those, and I had that I can't think of the flip or something, or page flip or something, and there's a lot of travel in those buttons, but eventually it's a little too flimsy for it to have that much travel.
Oh, okay.
So like the springs stopped working or something.
Yeah.
This one has been the most substantial and sturdy, plus it has a couple additional buttons that you can program to do whatever you want to do with it. These buttons, so they move. These buttons actually move, so you can tell that you pressed it down. But I probably wouldn't be. This will probably last me 10 years.
That's awesome.
Right, and I use it, several times every week.
Yeah. That's cool.
But it's iRig Blue Board.
Oh, okay. I use an iRig Pro for miking stuff sometimes. But I mean I you use an iPad Pro. Is that what you use?
Yeah.
See, I didn't have one. I had a smaller iPad and I tried, and it was just like, I like to have, a nice
bigger one, yeah.
display. And so I need to go in on that. I mean, I know that that's the way things are going. I recognize the convenience, but I also know that, like, I move, when I play, and so I get nervous. Like, if I travel a little bit too much, then you got to know where you're going, foot wise.
Well, yeah. Like, you're talking about like aiming for the pedal. Yeah, right. And it does take. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you, I started using, I transferred to iPad when I was at UC, University of Cincinnati.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All right. So prior to that, I was starting to, I was kind of, and then I saw a lot of guys, University of Cincinnati, using the pedals and stuff. I was like, well, if you're allowed to do this with classical saxophone, then maybe I'm allowed to do this with other things,
right.
So then I started and I actually had the smaller iPad at the time when I started, and then that was a huge encouragement for me to get the iPad Pro.
Right.
So, and as soon as the iPad Pro came out, and that was right around when it did come out, I got it right away.
That was kind of the game changer, right? I mean, once that display size, bigger.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I get it.
All right, man. Well, I mean, we could, there's 1,000 more things that we could talk about,
Sure,
but
yeah.
I enjoyed our conversation, and
Yeah, me too.
thanks again for doing this. I appreciate your energy and your generosity. You know,
Of course.
that's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for bringing me on, and hope I get to see you soon. I'm no stranger to Ohio. I make my way up there fairly frequently, so I'll have to pop in and say hi.
Please do, and even if you're just going to be in Cincinnati or something, please let me know. I certainly, I would come down to Cincinnati to hang or something.
That'd be awesome. We'll figure it out. Make it happen.
All right, man. Well, God bless you.
Hey, you too. Take care.